Welcome back, everybody, to the Two Birds and a Third Football Podcast. We are back after the divisional round has concluded for the NFL season. We got Josh, DJ, Hank, and myself, Ricky. What's going on, guys?
I'm good.
That's good.
Gee, oh wow, Hank, come on, just guys, a little bit more excited.
Nick Foles might have played his last game in a Eagles uniform.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
You never know.
You never know.
You never know. He might be back.
Anyways,
Like Nick Foles is honestly like herpes.
that's
Okay, he always
Ew.
comes
That
back.
actually goes
Whoa.
on.
No, okay, we need to stop that because
Yeah.
give me demonetized and it shut down now. But let's get straight into it. We got a lot to talk about, so we got to wrap up the divisional round and things that happened and kind of storylines that are going on with that. So first game that took place was Colts Chiefs. The Colts went on the road as the 6th seed to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. It was an interesting game because a lot of people thought that the Colts were one of the, obviously, based on what we saw, one of the hottest teams in the league. They won 9 out of their last 10 to finish the season. They won a playoff game where they shut down and pretty much dominated the Texans. So a lot of people thought that, hey, I think the Colts can go in and win this thing. But guess what? That wasn't the case. The Chiefs fired on all cylinders and pretty much put the game away early by defeating them 31-13. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna turn it over to Josh. Josh, how did you feel about this game and what did you take away from it?
What I felt about going into this game was I think I picked the Colts because I thought that they would have a more balanced attack throughout the game. The Colts were coming in with not just Andrew Luck at offense and Naeem Hines and that offense really clicking, but you also had that defense with Leonard basically getting the defensive rookie of the year. He led the NFL in tackles. I thought the Colts were better balanced and better equipped to play against the Chiefs than what really happened. I mean, let's talk about what actually happened in the game. The Chiefs showed up and the Chiefs went for the jugular immediately. I think that I kept trying to say that it was early, but the Colts, I think their first 12 plays had a total of like 30 yards, and they were all 3-and-outs. They went 4 3-and-outs in a row, and you just can't start football games like that, and you're not going to be successful, especially in playoff games when your offense literally can't get a first down on its first 12 attempts at a play. So I think we just saw a team that was ready to play in the playoffs. And it's surprising because the Chiefs had a bye, but the Colts were coming off of a very, very strong win. So it went differently than I expected, but can I say that I'm surprised that the Chiefs look like one of the best teams in the AFC? No. So we'll see what happens. Foxborough, Tom Brady actually doesn't play very well on the road in the playoffs. At home, he's a monster. I think I saw something like he's won 25 home games in the playoffs. But hey, I think for once the Chiefs fans might be excited about a playoff game because it's in Arrowhead. It's supposed to be cold as all hell. So we'll see. I don't think that it's going to be as high scoring as people think it is with Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. I think the weather is really going to bring that game down, but we'll see. I think it'll be exciting.
Yeah, so
Honestly, I think Tom Brady has played. Recently, he's lost 2 playoff games in Denver. This is just by memory, by the way. 2 playoff games in Denver, since his last away playoff win. 2 playoff games in Denver, both to Peyton Manning. He lost, and I think he lost 1 playoff game against Indianapolis, and I think before that he won a playoff game against the San Diego Chargers. Marty Schottenheimer was the head coach. It was Phillip Rivers' first NFL season starting. So that was the last time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what this game told me was that I think as of right now, like and this is a common theme for the rest of the playoff games in the divisional round was that it showed that the better teams were the ones that showcased themselves during the regular season. I mean, Kansas City. The reason why I took the Colts was because I felt that it's just we've known what happens to the Chiefs when they have some type of playoff implication. But the fact of the matter is that once the Chiefs, I felt, scored the second touchdown and went up 14-0, I personally felt that the game was, I know I hate to be like this, but I think it was over at that point because the way the Colts were moving the ball on offense, I had no confidence in them to win the game because it's just they looked completely outclassed by, and let's just say this, and this is gonna again a similar theme to all the teams that have lost. Listen, they just simply got outplayed, and I wasn't surprised at the outcome. I mean, it's just the Chiefs obviously were the better team, and I really have nothing much more to say other than congrats to the Chiefs. They're advancing to their first AFC Championship game since 1993. It's their first home playoff victory since Joe Montana wore the Kansas City uniform. So yeah, I'm excited. DJ, you have anything else?
Looks like we lost DJ for a minute.
So what else?
Hey guys, I'm sorry. I was just posting all the links to the Facebook page and everything so everyone can listen to us and our rambling.
No problem.
But yeah, so the deal is with the Chiefs, and the one thing that I knew they were going to be at least somewhat good on the offensive ball, but I think what really surprised everybody is that front four of their defense. They really stepped up and they really played a great game. And the Chiefs defense has not been a good defense, or maybe just below average defense throughout the whole entire season. I don't have their points per game number, but I know it might have been over 20, 22, maybe a little bit higher. And not just that, I also thought the running game was going to take a hit as well. And obviously that was not the case. I really wanted the Colts as a hot team to come into this. Usually the team who's been playing in basically a playoff game ever since week 16. I like to take those teams to go very far in the playoffs and make at least a 1 to 2 game win in the playoffs and maybe make it to the AFC or NFC championship. Unfortunately that didn't happen. I think what really did them in, obviously, because Andrew Luck was pressured throughout the whole entire game, but I can't count how many false start penalties they had or delayed games because they couldn't hear each other. It's the loudest stadium. A lot of people like to say that the Seattle Seahawks, it's essentially like they have the loudest stadium, but no, it's Kansas City, and it's tough to play there. And I look forward to this matchup because I believe that Kansas City had to play in Foxborough in the divisional round last year.
In the divisional round, they played them in 2016.
Okay, so it's a year prior to that. Okay, so yeah, I don't think the Patriots have had to go play a championship game in Kansas City. And I'm interested. We'll talk about this a little bit later in the podcast, but I think the biggest takeaway from that game was the defense of the Chiefs. It was very, very aggressive, and the front four really showed their worth in that game. And that's basically all I got to say. And poor Andrew Luck. Hopefully they could turn around next year. But I thought it was a great finish for them since they started 1-5. So I don't know how many teams have done that. Started 1-5 and then ended up being 10-6. They won.
The Chiefs were one of them. They started out. They were 1-4 or 1-5 in 2016 and ended up winning consecutive games and becoming a second seed.
Wow, I gotta start looking up what happened in 2016 because that would help me out a lot.
That was in 2015, but
Wow. 2015.
Yeah, they were 1-5. They won 10 straight games to go to 11-5. They won a playoff game versus the Texans. But still,
I think the one thing that impressed me about this game, I think it was in the second quarter, there was a drive where Andrew Luck through 3 times. It was first down, second down, third down. His first down pass was incomplete. His second down pass was tipped, and his third down pass was tipped. So when that happens and you're already behind the sticks, I think the score was 14-0 at that point. The Chiefs were just amped and they were ready to play. They won, you know.
Yeah, they came out. They definitely came out ready to play. I mean, they were firing on all cylinders, and you know, you kind of question it. Like, remember what happened to the Rams last year, where they came out of the bye and looked pretty flat.
Well,
You know,
well, that was
so-
because that was because they benched their starters. The Chiefs did not bench their starters week 17.
Right. I mean, yeah, obviously there are other factors into it. I mean, they benched Todd Gurley in week 17 this year, and he went out and did what he had to do. Him and CJ Anderson,
Don't remind me.
who was on like four different teams this year. He got like signed by like 4 different teams and released. Didn't they combine?
Raiders.
Yeah,
the Raiders, the Panthers.
Look, so let's get to the next game. It's my game, obviously, in case people weren't understanding what we were talking about. The Cowboys fall to the Rams 30-22 in an interesting, and I'll say this, interesting NFC divisional round matchup because, first things first, they march down the field and they get 3 points, and I was like, okay. This might be a problem, but it's the first drive, it's whatever. Cowboys go down the field, they get a touchdown, and now they're up 7-3, so now, the Cowboys knock them in the mouth, and now it's just like, okay, can they keep this up? Lo and behold, the Cowboys' greatest strength this whole season ended up becoming their greatest weakness in the defense. The linebacking core became completely neutralized, also the interior of the defensive line of the Cowboys was neutralized as well, and thus that's what allowed the Rams to run all over the Cowboys. And it wasn't the fact that the reason why the Cowboys lost were a couple things. The first thing is their defense, right? Their defense did not even get a stop. Like, the only time they got a stop was either the half or or one punt. I think they only punted once, if I recall. But what I can tell you is this, listen, no one expected the Cowboys to go into LA and beat them, other than me and a couple other people.
Other than all 3 of you guys.
Yeah.
other than DJ and myself.
But
I
don't think that works in this situation.
But
I
my,
wanted an NFC
I don't think it works in this
East
situation,
championship.
Ricky.
but here's my thing. The thing is that the Cowboys' offense surprising.
It's like a Warriors fan being like, nobody expected us to win. It's like everyone expected you to win.
But getting back to what I was saying, so the Cowboys, listen, people will get on Dak Prescott because he can't do this, and this. Dak Prescott was the only reason the Cowboys managed to have points in this game, okay? Dak Prescott pretty much kept the Cowboys in the game because their running game was completely shut down. If the Cowboys had to go for it on 4th down because they couldn't stop the Rams. If they had stopped the Rams maybe 2-3 times, they might have had a chance to win the game. Listen, kudos to the Rams. They completely managed to out-scheme the Cowboys. It was not on Jason Garrett for why we lost. It was just we got outplayed. Plain and simple.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Rams were put together to do exactly this, though, to be able to make runs deep into the playoffs. They learned from last year. So what did they do? They had a core nucleus on the offense that they could build around in a young quarterback, Todd Gurley, and then you have the 3-headed monster at wide receiver with Cooks, Kupp, and who's the third one? Woods. Cooks, Kupp, and Woods. I mean, I know Kupp got hurt, but what I'm saying is that they built this offense around that, and then they went and got Wade Phillips to play defense, because Sean McVay's an offensive guy, so he puts guys in coaching positions who excel at their job. So I think what the Rams showed is just that they're balanced, and if the Saints try to run on them, they're going to they'll be able to stop the run, and we've seen them do it in the passing game this year as well. We've seen them be able to stop it, and if you got Todd Gurley clicking on all cylinders, him and CJ Anderson rushed for 230 plus yards plus 3 touchdowns against Dallas's defense.
I'm going to say this right now, and I know we're going to allude to this, but I think that the real big weakness for the Rams is obviously their secondary. I will say that Marcus Peters and Akib to leave your chain at home.
To leave your chain at home.
They both almost single-handedly costed the Rams that game.
It's cost.
Whatever, grammar Nazi.
Whatever, Mr. NFL knowledge Nazi. Whatever.
But I was sitting there watching the game and I was thinking to myself, what the hell is Aqib Talib doing face guarding the wide receiver on that play when it didn't even have to happen? Like, he was pushing him out of bounds. All he had to do was turn around.
Well, Hank,
literally all he had to do.
I don't think they're going to call face guarding anymore. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many face guarding penalties that weren't called in the Saints game. I don't know.
No, but it wasn't just face guarding. He was pushing him out of bounds. Like, he was
the ball
physically.
Hey.
It doesn't matter.
Hank, this is the NFL.
No, I know, but it was a penalty. It was called a penalty.
Look,
is what I'm saying.
If you want to get on bad calls, what in the hell?
No, I'm not.
I'm not saying you.
I'm not saying it was a bad call. I'm saying, what the hell was he doing in that game? Like, I feel like the Saints are just gonna light him up.
We'll get to that. Yeah, and we'll get to that. This is my thing, right? This in the grasp call was probably one of the worst calls I've ever seen in my life. I mean, there was worse calls I've seen. But let me explain to you something. I could understand if there was a defender like actually grabbing Dak and he was being held by La'el Collins. I completely understand that because that's what it's supposed to be. There was no defender around him. And
you know what,
Ricky? The crazy part about that, Ricky, is that should have been a penalty on La'el Collins, because you are not allowed to physically pick up your own player and pull him.
You guys,
they did them a favor on that one.
As much as I love this talk about what kind of penalties should have been called and should not have been called, I remember last week I was complaining about a holding call that was blatantly missed in the Dallas Cowboys game, in which gave Dak Prescott a nice running room all the way to the goal line, actually to the 1-yard line, and which propelled them to win the game. So, Ricky, it's a little bit of karma. Hold on, Hank.
Okay.
But yeah, karma, Ricky, karma.
How was that karma, though?
It wasn't karma. I think that the most impressive part of this game was the fact that C.J. Anderson and Todd Gurley collectively ran for almost 240 yards against one of the best rushing defenses in the NFL, and the fact that the Rams were able to completely halt Ezekiel Elliott to less than 50 yards.
Well, Aaron Donald helps with that. Having Aaron Donald.
He does.
He does. And I mean, that's another that they built that. They wanted to be able to stop the run, because if you can't run the ball, you can't control the time of possession. Like you said, though, you think the Saints are going to throw all over him, and Drew Brees does do incredibly well at home. You see his home road splits, and it's almost unbelievable that he's that good of a quarterback, but he plays sometimes that poorly outside of this.
Yes. So
I do think
it helps? Do you think it helps? Wait, quick question. Do you think it helps Jared Goff that there's no elements? There's no elements happening in this. Like, there's no outside elements. It's going to be played in a dome. Do you think that helps Jared Goff?
No, because the thing is, what helps Jared Goff is the fact that there's not a lot of pressure on him. I feel that when he's pressured to make, and maybe he'll develop this over time. He's still a young quarterback. But I think what made him in the Cowboys game, he didn't have to do a lot. But I feel like if he's called upon to do a lot, and we're gonna move on because we got to talk about some other topics. If he's called upon to do something, I have a feeling that that's when the Rams will lose. But that's just me.
Yeah.
But so let's move on.
If you pressure him.
Yeah. So let's move on to one of the. Oh my God, this game. Chargers and Patriots. A lot of people thought that the Chargers could upset the Patriots. A lot of people thought that, hey, maybe the Patriots have a serious chance at losing at home. Oh boy, were people wrong. They completely annihilated the Chargers by a ridiculous score of, if I can get this, it was like 40. There it is, 41 to 28.
Yeah, 41-28. And it wasn't 41.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
For most of that game, it was 35-7.
that's what I'm saying.
For most of that game, it was just domination. Old man Rivers forgot his paddle. He was stuck on some rapids.
Oh my god.
No saving him. There was no saving him, guys. He looked bad. The team looked bad. I think I saw one stat at some point. It was in the second quarter. Melvin Gordon had 17 yards.
Yes,
But I mean,
it was horrible.
What are you supposed to do when you're down by that much? I know if you look at just the statistics at the end of the game, it kind of got padded for a lot of the Chargers players, but Bill Belichick just kind of said, but because everyone's saying, hey, your team's not as good as it's been in past years. And this is Bill Belichick's way of being like, it's another Sunday.
Hold my beer. But
I go to 8 consecutive AFC championship games. Like, get off my case. I'm Bill Belichick.
So, like Josh said, and I agree with him, this is extremely similar to the Baltimore and Chargers game in the sense that the score and the statistics don't really tell the whole story. Because if you actually watch this game like I did, I literally turned it off at halftime. It was 35-7. That is the legitimate score of this game. Sony Michel just ran all over him. Unreal. Does anybody else have anything to add to this? Because
honestly, did any of you guys pick the Chargers?
No, we all picked the Patriots.
Negative. This
was
was my free pick score game because I didn't want to guess on the Patriots because the Patriots could do something like that every single playoff.
I just didn't understand how. I felt like the only game in which a team could have upsetted the other team. I personally thought it was Dallas, but I wasn't. I was standing here thinking to myself like, this is Tom Brady. He doesn't lose to Philip Rivers. It just didn't make any sense. Like, I'm not saying anyone's an idiot, but I looked at this game and I was like, dude, this is the one lock this weekend. I felt like.
Oh
personally. Yeah. And it was a situation where, like all other times, Philip Rivers is unable to rise to the occasion against the Patriots. Tom Brady and Bill Belichick are just a giant thorn in his side, and honestly, he'll be going home and working on his 99th child, so it'll be great for him.
Yeah, I don't have very much to say on this. One thing I do want to say is he has such a god-awful throwing motion. I think Nathan Peterman might have it.
Well, when he sidearms it.
Hey, it works.
It works, yeah.
He's a future Hall of Famer. He's like Dan Marino. He's going to be known for being able to pick apart a field and throw the ball all over, but he never got a ring.
More like Dan Fouts.
The Chargers are good at pumping out quarterbacks who are good but can never take the next step.
Did you say future Hall of Famer, Josh?
Philip Rivers? Absolutely. He's not a first ballot. I disagree on the first ballot part. I'm not saying that, but dude, what he's done, he's thrown over 4,000 yards basically his entire career. He's always made it work. He had with Damian Tomlinson earlier in his career too, and dude, he has amazing statistics. Maybe no playoff wins, but I mean, if you're talking about just great quarterbacks to come through, and if you talk about the AFC West as a division at any point in history, you're going to talk about Philip Rivers dominating the passing yards in the AFC West for his entire career. So yeah, Hall of Famer. You can't talk about football without him. He's a Hall of Famer.
Eli's elite.
Eli, you can't spell elite without Eli. Now, but I want to move on to the final game of division round weekend. Probably this is in my opinion, the best one. Eagles taking on the Saints in the Superdome. The Eagles, on the first play of the game, knocked the Saints in the mat. Well, not really. Well, they actually did because they scored on that drive, and they were up 14-0 on the Saints. And a lot of people were like, "Oh, here comes Nick."
I thought that was the coup de grace. I mean, there was a statistic this year that said that if the Eagles scored in the first quarter, they won every single game that they played in. That's with the 7 games that they lost. they did not score once in the first quarter.
Yeah.
And, that kind of teased me. But then, again, it was just one of those situations where I knew that the Saints were going to be rusty in this game. I knew that the Eagles were going to come out fast because that's what they've been doing with Nick Foles at quarterback. In every single game that Nick Foles has played, they've had a score on either the first drive or somewhere in the first quarter. But I think they were honestly rusty because they hadn't started their starters. And then Cravon LeBlanc. Let me ask you a question. Who the hell is Craven LeBlanc? Okay.
I don't know who that is. Yeah.
He's the guy that intercepted the pass, Cravon LeBlanc.
Yeah.
And
A Malcolm
honestly,
Butler
it was
situation. Like a Malcolm
What?
Butler situation. Like a Malcolm Butler
Like a-
situation where
like
no
a-
one knew about him, and then he makes that.
No.
He makes the big play
Interception.
in center stage, gets the pick.
Yeah.
But at
But
least Big Dick Nick did everything he could for you guys.
He did. Honestly, this was a game where we had opportunity. The Eagles had opportunities to get something done, and fortunately, they let those opportunities slip right through them. They had a possible fumble recovery that they could have been deep in Saints territory. They didn't recover the ball. Nick threw a costly interception at the beginning of the second quarter, really changed the tides for everything because they could have gone up 21-0, and the game was 20-14. So I felt like that would have been right there at the end of the game. There was no way the Saints were going to be able to come back. There was Doug Peterson, instead of getting a 10-yard penalty, they had fourth and one, and I knew that was going to be I was yelling at the TV, fake punt, watch out for the fake punt. And of course they did it. And then the costly interception at the very end of the game where Alshon Jeffrey had that's a catch that, he could catch with his eyes closed. He could bird box that ball in his hands, and he dropped it. I mean, it's inexcusable. It went right through his hands. But I'll tell you something. It's a team game. The team lost. Unfortunately, you're going up against a Hall of Fame quarterback, a future Hall of Fame head coach, Sean Payton. I don't care, if this is the ski mask bowl. I don't care if they're going to turn their locker room into a nightclub. It doesn't really matter to me. They didn't pull their opportunities together. But at the same time, we don't get there if it's not for Nick Foles, backing up Carson Wentz. We don't get there if it's not for Alshon Jeffrey making basically every other catch, whenever any other ball comes into his hands. Brandon Graham was important to our season. As much as I hate to admit it, Doug Peterson was a part of us, of the Eagles doing well. It just, that's how the cookie crumbles. And I'll say this right now. This is probably the most satisfied I've ever felt after a playoff loss. And it's likely because of the Super Bowl ring and possibly because the Dallas Cowboys also lost. So
listen here, Hank.
Have at it.
No, but look, obviously, kudos to Nick Foles and what he's done. Let me tell you, so I would not have expected the Eagles to be in the situation they were in and possibly winning that game. But they had a chance, and obviously things happen. Now, before we move on to season wrap-ups, there is a question I want to pose to all of you. Nick Foles, obviously what?
Is this what I think it is? So this isn't
Nick
just a
Foles.
question.
Okay. Nick Foles has brought up an interesting situation because his story is probably one of the most crazy stories I've seen. So, dude gets drafted. He ends up being a starting quarterback for the Eagles for a couple years, leads them to the playoffs. Then he gets traded. Then he plays for a bit in St. Louis. Goes, he leaves. Goes to KC for a bit. Contemplates retirement during that said period. Then he goes back to Philly and leads them to a Super Bowl win when no one expected him to. And then does this. Goes on a little mini playoff run. Now, the first question, there's a couple questions that I guess DJ wanted to pose as well. First, so it's going to be three questions. Number one, is he making us like one of the best backups that we've ever seen? Or is he the best backup ever? That's number one. Number two, is he going to be, a Hall of Famer for the Eagles, which sounds like an obvious question, and does he have the possibility of having a Hall of Fame career when it's all said and done? So, I guess, well, let me start with Hank because he's number one fanboy.
All right, so when it comes to question number one, is he the best backup quarterback in NFL history? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. That's the first question. Yep.
And to the answer to that question, I will say no. I would say that if you're doing an NFL Films top 10 list of the best backup quarterbacks in NFL history, he would be on that list. He would be on that list somewhere between 1 to 10, or he would be in some kind of honorable mention kind of thing. The best backup quarterback in NFL history is Jim Plunkett. By far the best backup quarterback. And he actually has a more complex story than Nick Foles, because when Nick Foles came into the league, when he was drafted, to most people, he was like a relative nobody. He was like a third-round draft pick. Jim Plunkett was a Heisman Trophy winner at USC. He was drafted with the first overall pick to the New England Patriots. He ended up sucking in New England in the 70s because New England sucked in the 70s. And then he ended up going to San Francisco. I probably had kind of an average career, ended up being a backup, ended up, going by the wayside, then got picked up by the Raiders. And then the Raiders, they ended up losing their starting quarterback. He was put into I guess the playoffs, against the Philadelphia Eagles and the Super Bowl against the Eagles, and ended up beating the Eagles, then went back to backup, and then the quarterback went down again, I think, and then he went back to being the starter and ended up beating the Washington Redskins in a Super Bowl. Now, I don't think he ever won Super Bowl MVP, and he's not a Hall of Famer, but to me, he is the greatest backup quarterback in NFL in modern day NFL history.
And you know what, Hank, you bring up a good point there. And one thing though, he didn't go to USC. He went to Stanford.
Stanford. My bad.
No worries. But you're right. But he was also in a different time. I think the quarterback was definitely a very, very important part of that offense in past years, but a lot of it was defense. A lot of it was the running game. So, quarterback was, he ran the offense basically. But nowadays, the quarterback is almost the most important thing in the offense, which I believe is the offensive line. But as you look where drafts go, typically, if you have a quarterback that you want to go with, they're going to go first over the offensive lineman. But as far as Nick Foles goes, Nick Foles, in my opinion, with his career and how he's held himself up, I know you guys, he's going to be a Hall of Famer for the Eagles. He already has a statue in front of the link. I think I think you have to consider, if he goes to another team, goes to a Super Bowl, and makes a deep playoff run, because in all honesty, the magic, it's not gone yet. I mean, Alshon Jeffrey dropped the ball. He dropped the ball. They were driving down the field just like Nick Foles does in these types of situations. And unfortunately, the sure hands of Alshon didn't come through. But I think that he is on pace if he makes another run on another team or the same team. I would say that he would be the best backup and maybe the first backup quarterback. I might be wrong. Maybe the first backup quarterback to go in the Hall of Fame. Not first ballot. I'm not saying first ballot, but the type of story that we saw Nick Foles just go through in his past 2 to 3 years, it's unlike any other story you've ever seen. It's a storybook Disney movie, the way he won the Super Bowl.
More storybook than Kurt Warner?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, well, okay. Kurt Warner
was
never a
bagging
He was.
Yes,
Yeah,
he was.
No,
He was. He was a backup with the Packers.
Yeah.
He was like a practice squad player with the Packers.
I understand.
And then he ended up bagging groceries. This guy was bagging. I love Nick Foles, but that dude was bagging freaking groceries.
and throwing
and
bread
Publix.
across the store.
You know what? You won't ever see a story like Kurt Warner. You can't compare the two. They're both different stories. But what I'm saying is you'll never see a story like this happen. Nick Foles was not supposed to lead them to a Super Bowl. Kurt Warner, that first year, I can't. Yeah, he won the first year. That was a pretty storybook ending there. Not ending, actually, kind of the beginning of his career. But I'm sorry. The Rams were the greatest show on turf. They beat the Titans, who was, I think, their first or second year in the league. Nick Foles went and beat Tom Brady. He beat Tom Brady, one of the greatest quarterbacks, if not the greatest quarterbacks of all time. I'm sorry.
I'm not gonna.
People forget he also holds a tied record for most touchdowns in a game.
No one forgets that. Hank and I were at that game.
I'm not saying you forget Hank. I'm saying that's you probably whisper that every night before you go to bed to your Nick Foles body pillow. I know.
I will say this, okay, and I'll let someone else speak. The only obstacle facing Nick Foles is the fact that throughout his career, he has never started a season as a starter and ended the season as a starter. It's never happened, okay? And when he started seasons, he does not start seasons off well, whether he doesn't have good statistics or the teams aren't winning. Nick Foles is at his best when he has to come in for someone else. There's a reason why at the end of, the middle and the end of the 2013 season, he was so successful. And then the beginning of the 2014 season, while the team was winning, he was putting up lower than mediocre numbers. I mean, he was a guy who was projected to have 26 touchdowns and 20 interceptions that season. And then he goes to the Rams, starts as the starter, and basically gets run out of town as the St. Louis Rams quarterback. Then with the Chiefs, he plays 2 games. He plays pretty well, 3 touchdowns, 2 wins. And then with the Eagles, he ends up coming in week 14, and then wins the Super Bowl. And then this year, he starts out the first game of the season. He played terrible in that game. He was playing so poorly, right, that people were coming. He was like, that's not me. This isn't me. This isn't how I play. People were literally coming out and being like, you're a fraud, bro. You're a fraud. That's what they were saying about him. I was not saying, but like people who comment on Twitter and people, Pro Football Talk, they were saying that he was garbage. He was a fraud. That he was a fluke. And then he comes in and he plays well at the end of the season. He's like the end of the season man. He is Mr. December. That's what he is. Mr. December, Mr. January. That's who he is. And unfortunately, in the NFL, you need just a little bit more consistency. And I love Nick Foles, okay? I will never say anything bad about him, but I'm also going to be honest about his limitations.
Okay, real quick, Josh, I'll let you jump in right after this. I just want to say, well, if you're going to compare that and you say he's Mr. January, Mr. October, well, Mr. Peyton Manning was Mr. Regular Season. So that kind of thing. I don't know how. But he also
won 2 Super Bowls.
I understand that. And if Nick Foles wins 2 Super Bowls, he's elite.
Well, I mean,
he didn't win 2 though. That's the thing.
Yeah, and
that was my whole point about this thing. Is that I love the Nick Foles story, and it's gonna go down as one of the best stories in NFL history. They're gonna make a 30 for 30 for it or whatever. But it's definitely one of the best happy ending stories that you could see. It's right up there with the whole Ray Lewis winning a Super Bowl on his way out. It's it's up there with some of the great ones, but he's not a Hall of Famer. If he won a second one and got Super Bowl MVP 2 years in a row, throw him into the Hall of Fame just for the fact that what in the actual all of hell. How could that?
It's not over yet, Josh. It's not over yet.
He's out of the playoffs. He needs the scenario of back-to-back is
I-
therefore over.
No. I'm not saying back to back. I'm just saying that if he were to get another starting job somewhere, and he would make a deep playoff run, well, what's to say he can't make that Hall of Fame from there?
If he won a
He
Super
might.
Bowl with another team, then yeah, he's obviously in the argument because everybody who wins 2 Super Bowls is automatically in the argument for
Not Jim Plunkett.
Well, he's going to be eventually. He'll get in eventually.
I mean, you can say that Nick Foles might eventually because of all the records he's broken, but the fact of the matter is Nick Foles has besides one time, he hasn't really been an MVP candidate. Nick Foles isn't a consistent starter, unfortunately, which I think that he should be a starter on some team. I would if the Eagles were like, hey, we'll make Nick Foles the starter, I'd be like, yeah, make Nick Foles the starter. I'm fine with that. Get rid of Carson Wentz. Who cares? I don't care who the starter of my team is, whether it's Wentz or whether it's Foles. It doesn't really matter to me. But you need kind of more elite numbers or more like buffered up numbers in order for me to be in the Hall of Fame. I would love for him to be in the Hall of Fame. That'd be freaking awesome. But, it's all in the cards.
My just quick thoughts, and then we'll move on to team wrap-ups. Look, Nick Foles, he's gonna go into the Eagles Hall of Fame, obviously, because he's the quarterback that led him to the Super Bowl victory. The number 9 will most likely be retired, knowing what he's done. And it's not just like one run. Like, the dude had one of the best statistical seasons in NFL history in 2013. It's just unreal what he's done with the Eagles organization. Just, and not only that, taking his team that was at the time like 6 and 7? 6 and 7, excuse me.
6 and 7.
And then go to the play. Like, it's like he will be recognized in his own organization based off of how that organization has gone, what they've gone through and stuff like that. As for NFL Hall of Famer, the thing is that if he leads another team to a Super Bowl, by all means, like, depending on how he does it, he'll be put in the conversation. But with all that being said, listen, Nick Foles, fantastic story. I think Jim Plunkett, I agree with Hank, he's the best backup quarterback ever. But as for Nick Foles, he'll have his number retired. He'll have everything done good with the Eagles organization once his career's said and done. But I still think that he's not a Hall of Famer as of right now because, obviously he's still 29, going on 30. We'll see what happens. But with that being said, let's get into the season wrap-up for our teams, guys. So, obviously, all of us are now done our seasons. 3 of us made the playoffs. One of us had a very interesting season nonetheless. We're going to go ahead and start with DJ and his Browns, his slightly depressing Factory of Sadness. Now actually becoming a good team. Solid team, I should say. DJ, I want to actually have your thoughts. Like, how do you feel about this season? What are you thinking about the following season? Are you excited? What do you feel about how this season went? If he's there.
Well, Rick, there's a lot of stuff that has gone on during the course of the Browns season. I think everyone's been a witness to it. We have, about 8 games in or 6 games, 7 games in, we lose our head coach. We're thinking to ourselves, oh, man, what's going to happen here? We're going to go into straight tank mode in. We're not going to be able to be where we once was, or basically be better than we were, 0-16. But look at us now. We go 7-8-1, 1 game away from 500. Possibly the best ever comeback from an 0-16 season. There's only been, technically 2, minus the Buccaneers. But, it's great. I'm ecstatic. I couldn't be more happier. One thing I will say is that Freddie Kitchens hire. Man, I don't know what to say really about that. I'm going to let him we're giving another guy basically a chance here with no experience coaching, no head coaching experience whatsoever, but he's been a coordinator and a quarterback's coach and a running back's coach, basically everything in offense Anything an offense needs, he has done. So I'm okay with that. But the guy just got his first offensive coordinator position for 6, 7, 8 games this and how he has grown with Freddie Kitchens running the offense. Obviously, him and Baker are getting along. You know, we're going to see some definite changes to our defense as we go. I think we're I think we're about to hire our defensive coordinator. But as of right now, I do not know who it is. It's between two people. I think we have our offensive coordinator already signed up. But to be honest, I am ecstatic for next season. You guys have heard me for the past 2 years on this podcast screaming at the top of my lungs every single time. The next year, Browns are going to go 10-6. Browns are going to go 11-5. And I've been horribly wrong the past 2 times. I was actually kind of close this time. It wasn't looking good in the beginning, but we almost got it. I mean, if we had a kicker, we would be at 10-6 at least. That's a shame to think about, but yeah, that's where we're at right now. With all the turmoil that we went through, and we basically missed the playoffs by a few games because of a kicker. I'm just happy. I mean, if we made the playoffs, just think of this. If we made the playoffs after an 0-16 season, we still had a shot 2 games left at the end of the year. I mean, that's just not a Browns thing.
You didn't have a realistic shot. Wasn't it like the odds were like
there was
12%.
Percentage, right?
Okay,
right?
wait.
Right?
So you're telling me there's a chance?
No, I'm telling you, yeah, but not to use the overused.
There's always a chance.
But yes, I'm sorry. I will take that. We still had an outside shot to get in. Yeah, we need some help. Yeah, we need some people to tie at the end of the year, which is definitely not going to happen. Only the Browns would tie twice in a year. But yeah, I'm ecstatic. I couldn't be more happy for what we have going for us right now. I think we are one of the youngest teams on defense, one of the youngest teams on offense, and we have a crap load of talent on both ends. As far as draft, we need to be going at our offensive line, linebacker, and a receiver. That's what we're looking at. But yeah, I'm ecstatic. Can't wait.
Awesome. So let's move on to the next team that was unfortunately eliminated. Josh's Ravens. His Ravens had a great season. I mean, they obviously didn't start. They started out kind of average, and then they took off. I mean, they went 10-6 on a good run, and they managed to get to the playoffs. Unfortunately, they didn't get where they wanted to go. But Josh, how did you feel about the season, and how do you feel about anything going forward?
About the season, I like the fact that basically the entire season we had one of the most dominant defenses in the NFL, and I love defense. I'm still a defensive-minded guy. We ended up finishing with we were first in yards allowed as well as first in points allowed. Still at the end of the year, and we played some good teams, so I like that. I love that going forward. I think that Wink Martindale, our defensive coordinator, has done a great job. I think the players love him. There's obviously going to be changes this offseason because of contract negotiations, so we'll see how that plays out coming forward. We have to re-sign CJ Mosley, try to get Terrell Suggs, and try to keep Eric Weddle. We'll see what happens. So the defense part of my season, I loved. I think that we have a lot of young guys. They're able to coach up guys all the time. And you've seen tons of Ravens players get poached over the years after the Ravens developed them. Pernell McPhee was one of them. Paul Kruger, DJ, going over to the Browns. Arthur Jones. So I think that there's a lot of talent there in the defensive side. Offensive side, I loved the second half, the way we ran the ball. The first half was all about the air. The second half was all about the ground. In the last 8 weeks of the season, we had the number 1 rushing offense in the NFL with averaging over 200 yards per game. That's the kind of thing I love. I like that kind of football, ground control, run the ball. I think we don't need a star running back because, as you've seen over the past few years, we're able to make stars out of just our running system. The promotion of Greg Roman up to offensive coordinator, I think, is going to help because Marty Morningwig didn't make the decisions that needed to be made during that playoff loss. So all in all, moving forward, I'm excited. You guys know how I feel about Lamar, so I won't dive into it right now because I've already said it. He's young, so I'm going to give him a chance. I don't hate him. I don't like some of his attributes. I hate his ball security. I hope he figures out how to work on his accuracy in the offseason, maybe have some time with his receivers. I say we try to keep the guys that we have so they can work together, try to get kind of, that chemistry going. He did come in halfway through the season. So I'll say as a rookie coming in later, trying to get that chemistry with the number ones that you haven't really practiced with all year. I'll give them that. So moving forward, I'm excited for the Ravens. I will give them a solid B in the overall grade for the season because obviously we made the playoffs. We had some really strong points, but let's work on the things we need to work on in the draft. I say get offensive linemen. Don't go just offensive linemen basically, and then maybe a defensive stud because we have some aging guys. But yeah, that's my wrap up of the Ravens.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, someone actually asked in the comments, what do you do at the QB spot? And I guess you kind of answered that with Lamar. And I guess
You
with
have to roll with them.
It's the only thing they can do.
Yeah, it's the only thing you do at this point because if you were unsure, you would have put Joe Flacco in, and I think that it was a tough decision to make, but John Harbaugh made it right there, right then, saying that this is the future, and I think that was the nail in the coffin for Flacco's career as a Baltimore Raven. Thanks for the Super Bowl. Hope you do well wherever you go, but he's definitely gone.
Anyways, I'll do mine next because my team was eliminated next. Obviously, the Cowboys season was probably one of the crazy. It was probably one of the craziest seasons I've ever gone through as a fan. Obviously, I'm not old enough to have I have a good amount of time, but I still need a little bit more to see much more. But hey, as of right now, this season was probably the craziest season I've ever had as a fan of the Cowboys because for them to go 3-5, okay, so they were 3-5. They were looking really mediocre to bad. They were looking at 6-10 at best. Then Amari Cooper happens. Well, they were 3-4 before that, but you get the point. Amari Cooper happens. This was probably the most impactful midseason trade I've ever seen in my entire life. Amari Cooper single-handedly changed the entire complexion of this Cowboys team. Okay? I love the trade from the get-go. I mean, the first-round pick, I was like, I don't know. But I was like, you know what? This is what we need. We need to make sure and see if Dak Prescott's the guy, this, that, and the third. And it changed everything. I mean, Dak Prescott better. Ezekiel Elliott was playing better. The whole team was playing better. The defense was playing better. Everything was getting together. They go on a after starting 3-4, they end up going on a 7-2 run and winning a playoff game and kind of sticking with the Rams for a bit before they fell off. But the fact of the matter is as a young team, for them to do what they did, the fact that they got a Pro Bowler with their first round selection in Leighton Vander Esch, unreal. I couldn't, oh my God, I couldn't ask for anything more. Obviously, I wanted a Super Bowl title. That's what every fan wants. But looking at it realistically, this Cowboys season went from, at that point, a C-, D+, to a B+, A- because of the circumstances they were under. I think that if this Cowboys team had, a much better, if they had this trade happen at the beginning of the season, I think the Cowboys finish with a much better record than what they had, especially with the close games. I think Amari Cooper helped them out a lot, and I think that he single-handedly saved the franchise at this point in time, along with Leighton Vander Esch. But I don't want to go on for too long. But overall, going from a pretty bad, mediocre season to a good season, winning a playoff game, you can't ask more than that. And give it a B+, A-. So I'll move on to Hank. Final team that was eliminated out of our group. Sad face, I get. Well, actually, good because I don't want the Eagles to win. But
I think that Ricky and Josh could agree with me when we look back at our teams and how they did this season. We would probably say that the season was not a successful season. It's because Ricky, your Cowboys have 5 Super Bowls. Josh's Ravens have 2 Super Bowls, and my Philadelphia Eagles are the defending Super Bowl champs. And when that happens, you have such high expectations going into this. You're almost expected to, go far in the playoffs and possibly win a Super Bowl. Okay, and when that doesn't happen, you have expectations. You have to say that it wasn't a successful season. However, what I will say right now is that the Philadelphia Eagles, if I could put them into one word, I would call them resilient. I wouldn't say that they were as resilient as the Dallas Cowboys or the Indianapolis Colts or any of those teams like that started really, really poorly. But 4-6 was probably the lowest point I've ever been as a fan. I wanted to throw up after that game. It was the most putrid game I'd ever been a part of. But to just see this team play that same team, be up 14-0 against them in the playoffs, they needed a lot of things to happen for them, but they also needed to win some pretty big games, and they did so in sending Nick Foles off the way that they did. I think that the only question mark with this team is Carson Wentz. And my only advice to Carson Wentz is the fact that Carson Wentz needs to get out of the shadow of Nick Foles. I think that getting rid of Nick Foles was something that needed to happen because of the controversy with the fans. Nothing against him. He's my favorite quarterback of all time, and that'll never change. Even if Carson wins 5 Super Bowls, it'll never change. But he needs to prove that he can stay healthy. We need to take those kids' gloves off because, it's not really doing anything for us. And we need to end up establishing a better running game, get a better running back in the draft, possibly better offensive linemen. Doug Peterson needs to call a football game better because when you look at the playoffs and the Eagles did not run the football very well and still had some decent success, but you're not going to get far in the postseason if you can't run the football. You look at every one of our teams that lost, struggled to run the football. The other team's defense stopped the run, and you're unable to do anything because you pass the desperation if you're not able to run. So, again, I would give my team a B-, but of course maybe a B for resiliency and in the moving on process, and that's all I have.
Yeah.
Did you give Hank, because you're a teacher, do you ever give like that little bit of extra credit to somebody on their test, like
because Nick Foles played? Nick Foles played.
Nick. Hey,
that
Nick,
little bit right there.
I'm gonna give you some extra credit. Come into my office later.
No.
All right, guys, that's enough for 2 birds and a third. We'll see you guys then. I'm playing. Okay. For our final topic before we get to picks, obviously we have a situation going on with Kyler Murray. Obviously, Kyler Murray is, for those that don't know, he actually he's played for the Oakland Athletics. He was their first-round selection a couple years ago. It's been a while since I last saw.
Has he actually played for them?
No, he's supposed to be their #1 pick in this upcoming draft.
Yeah,
and the big hoopla going on right now is that he was basically, everyone knew that the A's with their #1 pick would get Kyler Murray. Like, that was a known fact. But now he's declared for the NFL, so the A's wanted to, they literally, MLB was willing to rewrite how contracts work to try to sign him to a big deal, even as like a first-year player, to get him to go to the MLB. But sounds like he wants to go into the NFL. I don't think he's not a #1 pick talent. So
heck
kind
no.
of interested in what's happening. Like, he's not going to go in the top 10 even. I think a lot of right now. Well, you never know. Right now,
there are drafts right now, Josh. There are drafts right now that are projecting Kyler Murray to be drafted. I think what's the Giants pick? The 6th, the 7th
pick, the 6th pick.
So,
oh my God!
There are drafts.
I don't think he's.
Drafts.
I mean, I guess there's draft. There's always a draft that's going to do it, just so you can talk about that draft. And
I hope the Giants pick him.
Me too. But real talk. No disrespect to Kyler Murray.
Actually, I don't want them to pick him. I want them to have Eli Manning for the next 100 years.
That's
you're gonna.
It's almost
out in his wheelchair when he gets older.
It's almost 2 free wins every year. Just ask Ricky.
Yeah, yes, we agree. But no, but let me talk about this. No offense to Kyler Murray whatsoever. He's a fantastic talent nonetheless. I do not think he's a first round talent by no means. No disrespect to the guy. It's just the problem is that I would not use a first round pick on the guy. I wouldn't because he's talented. I just don't know if his game can translate to the NFL.
I think with the last few teams and the last few drafts in the NFL, right?
Mm-hmm.
The 2016 draft, we had a few quarterbacks go in that draft. The 2017 draft, we had like 4 quarterbacks go in the first or second round.
Mm-hmm.
And then this last draft, there were 5 quarterbacks in the first round. So that's like, what? That's like 12 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And then the other teams that have quarterbacks too, I think that what that did was that deflated the need to draft more quarterbacks. So what we're going to have is, I think this is a situation where you might have a team trade up into the draft in order to get one of these guys, or this might be a situation where a team might trade a team might trade back so that they could possibly get a Tua or what's his name, Sunshine from Clemson. Okay,
Lawrence,
Trevor Lawrence, right?
Trevor Lawrence.
So there's a situation where that's something that might come into play. But looking at this draft, I mean, you have Locke, you have Haskins, you have Murray, you have the kid from West Virginia. There are some decent options, but when it comes to picking quarterbacks in the draft, it's a crapshoot.
Does Locke go to Denver? Who do you think's going to trade up? Who do you think's going to trade up? Do you think? I mean, we haven't even seen the combine or pro days or anything, and you guys have seen how at the end of the season, how much changes until draft day. Seriously, though.
Oh yeah.
All of a sudden,
a lot.
All of a sudden, somebody shoots up the draft board, and right now, everyone's talking about Nick Bosa being like number 1, possibly, or number 2. But dude, you might have somebody who just has some stellar workout. Blows everyone away.
Nick Bosa could, no, God forbid, I hope it doesn't happen, but he could get injured during his pro day.
No.
You know what I'm
That's
saying?
not going to happen. He stayed out the whole year from Ohio State, so he doesn't get injured.
DJ, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying, there are players who have gotten injured in their pro days. I'm not saying it's going to be him, okay? I'm not saying that.
He's not going to have a pro day, bro. He's going to do the combine, and that's it. I mean, if he sat out the whole year at Ohio State, and he still might be the number 1 overall pick, there's no way he's going to have a pro day.
Well, I don't think he fits it. He doesn't fit into the Cardinals' defensive scheme, though.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
He doesn't fit that scheme at all, so I don't think the Cardinals would use that. Maybe they trade out of their number 1 pick.
Wait, what scheme? They just got a new head coach.
They don't know what the scheme's going to be yet.
Yeah, so we're gonna hold off on that. But
okay, hold on, guys. I need to talk about Kyler Murray real quick. Just because Kyler Murray declared for the NFL draft does not mean that he is going to be in the NFL. He could also has been declared in the MLB draft. He's already been drafted in MLB. So, my theory on this is he's using this as a bargaining chip to inflate the deal he's going to get from the A's, which what Hank said, to rework and do a whole different new contract that's never been done before. So Kyler Murray, once he goes and gets measured at the combine with how big his hands are, what his actual height is, I don't even think he's 5'10". People are saying he's actually 5'8" because, you take your shoes off, take everything off. So you're going barefoot. And there are people saying that, he's 5'8". So he's going to be the shortest quarterback to play in the NFL. Doug Flutie, barring Doug Flutie. I think he was even 5'10". But Kyler Murray, I don't think, this is, again, one of the tinfoil hat theories for DJ. I don't think he's actually going to play football. I think he's still going to play baseball.
See, and that's why I say he's not a first rounder because
hell no.
Because this is why. Now, if someone's stupid enough to do it, it would be Denver or someone. Because I'm looking. The Browns already got their quarterback, but I'm looking I'm looking at the draft order.
Well, and the draft order, none of the top teams really need quarterbacks.
Look,
This is
Arizona,
Draft.
San Francisco.
They just spent a top pick on Rosen.
San Francisco, they already got Jimmy G.
They
New
got
York,
Jimmy G.
the Jets, Oakland,
They have one.
Tampa Bay,
The
Giants.
The Jets have one. Tampa Bay's already said that they're sticking with Jameis Winston. The organization is coming.
Also, it might be smoke and mirrors, but the Giants have also stated that they are planning on sticking with Eli. But I don't think that means they're not going to draft someone.
They're probably going to take a quarterback.
If the Giants are smart, they draft a quarterback,
Right.
or they draft one next year.
What I'm saying is that out of those teams that you guys just named, the Giants are really the only team that might seriously take a quarterback. I think the rest of them are entrenched with, even up to the Raiders. The Raiders are right up there too. I think that the Raiders stick with Carr. I think the Buccaneers are going to stick with Jameis at least this year. I don't think they're going to use a draft pick on quarterback. The Jets just got Sam Darnold. The Cardinals just got Josh Rosen. And the 49ers have Jimmy G. That's all the quarterbacks.
You might see this draft as being like a 2013 draft where Geno Smith was drafted in the second round, and what's his face, who went to the Buffalo Bills. He played for Florida State.
EJ Manuel.
He was the only first round quarterback drafted. You might see something like that.
He was so bad.
He was terrible. Terrible.
I want to go ahead on. Let's get the picks.
Yeah, no worries.
Can I say just one more quick thing?
Sure.
One quick thing?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so if Kyler Murray is not going to play football for another reason is because, oh my goodness, I had a brain fart. Let's go to picks.
But it's all good. So we have two games transpiring in the conference championship weekend. The first game is Saints taking on the Rams in New Orleans. The right to go to the Super Bowl. Both these teams, Saints haven't appeared in a Super Bowl since 2009. The Rams haven't appeared in a Super Bowl since 2002, I believe. No, 2001. I'm sorry, 2001. Excuse me. Technically, yeah. But with that being said, guys, I'm gonna start with Josh. Josh, who are you taking in this game?
Which one? Sorry.
Saints and Rams.
Saints and Rams. I was just thinking about it in my head. I'm going with the Saints because they have home field advantage, and I've just loved Drew Brees. And as we talked about it, if there's anybody who deserves another Super Bowl ring, it's absolutely Drew Brees. Also, they have played really balanced all year. They have a good running attack, and even if the running attack doesn't work, it's 85% chance that Michael Thomas is going to catch what Drew Brees throws to him. So,
and what's your score?
It's going to be 31-28 Saints.
Okay, 28. You said 28, right?
Yes.
Okay. Just making sure. Hank, who are you going with in this matchup?
I'm going to go with the Saints. I think the Saints have a better defense. I think that now that the Saints have a game under their leg playing against the Eagles and coming back scoring 20 consecutive points, I think that they're not rusty anymore. I think Michael Thomas is going to expose their weaker secondary. I mean, he already did it earlier this season. So I have the Saints winning. With the final score of 24 to 22.
22, okay. Next, DJ, who are you going with?
Well, anybody who could beat Nick Foles in the playoffs is going to beat the next team coming. So I'm going to go with the Saints here. I want to think that defense is going to play a big part in this one, but I'm thinking it's going to be a 28-25. I'm going 28-25 Saints.
Okay. And then I'm going to go with the Saints as well. No disrespect to the Rams. I'm not picking them because I'm salty that we lost them. Rams are a good team. It's just the biggest issue is that they're playing in New Orleans. And last time they were there, the Saints did it was 35 to like 30. The game ended that way, but let's be honest with ourselves. The Saints are on a mission. The Rams, like Hank said, their biggest deficiency, and the Cowboys did show, was their secondary. I think that Drew Brees picks them apart, but the scoreboard won't make it seem like that. I'm thinking the final score 31-24. Saints move on to the Super Bowl for the second time in franchise history. Next, moving over to the AFC. Interesting storyline here. You have the Patriots, who are appearing in their 8th straight championship game. Meanwhile, the Chiefs appearing in their first since 1993. The Chiefs trying to get to their first Super Bowl since Super Bowl IV. The Patriots trying to get back to the Super Bowl for a third time. The last team to do that was the Buffalo Bills in the 80s, 90s era. But with that being said, Josh, who are you rolling with?
I am rolling with the Chiefs just because it's at home. I think they overcame that playoff hump for Andy Reid. I think that he is a really good coach, and I think a lot of people kind of laugh at Andy Reid because he's never gotten it done as a head coach. I'm rolling with the Chiefs. I think that at home, it's supposed to be bad weather. Tom Brady's going to have to play in a really, really hostile environment in an AFC championship game. Give me the Chiefs. Low scoring, though, 28-24.
Okay. Hank, who you rolling with?
I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna use not devil's advocate. I'm gonna use some reverse psychology here.
Go for
okay?
it. Go, please.
Okay. I would love it if Andy Reid won a Super Bowl. I'm not one of those Eagles fans who are like, oh, I hate him, so I'm gonna root against him. No. Okay. Andy Reid brought us Doug Peterson. Andy Reid brought us Nick Foles. So I'm gonna say this, okay? Because last week I said the Colts would win, they lost big. I'm gonna say the Patriots are gonna win this game, hoping that the Chiefs win, and I think the score is gonna be 27-20.
Okay. Next, DJ, who are you rolling with?
Well, considering the only Super Bowl that Andy Reid went to was against this man he's playing this Sunday, I'm going to say that he's going to be the kryptonite to Andy Reid and the Chiefs. I got the Patriots taking this one. I know you guys know, Josh, there's going to be some rough weather there. Well, I mean, Tom Brady plays in Foxborough. He's used to that. And, he's been in the league a long time. I think he's played maybe probably 6 times in Arrowhead. I have to look up the stats on what his record is.
1-5.
Oh, ho, ho. There's a hole in my theory. But I still think with what the Patriots did to the Chargers, which is a formidable defensive front, means that offensive line's coming to protect Brady in these last 2 games. I think Belichick's going to plan against what Reid's doing. I just think he's going to play tiddlywinks with Reid's heart, and Belichick's going to walk away with another AFC championship and on to his 6th or 7th straight Super Bowl? 7th Super Bowl in his era, right?
No, this would be his 9th.
No, well, okay, not
in totality.
In the Patriots, my bad. Or
Oh,
just 6. No, it's 7.
No, they'll be going to the Super Bowl 11 times now in total. Like, Jesus
Not
Christ.
11.
Yeah,
Not 11. But anyways, I got the Patriots winning this game. Bad weather. I think Brady gets it done. I'm going to go 26-21 here, Patriots.
What was the final score, I'm sorry?
26-21, Patriots.
Okay.
And it's going into overtime.
Okay. So, this game, this is tough. I think
it can't be 26-21 as the final score if it went into overtime.
It'd be 27.
It would have to be 27-21. Do you want to change it, or do you want to predict overtime and somehow not have the score matched?
Change the score. I'm going to go ahead and go 27-24.
Okay. So, I'm gonna roll with Kansas. I'm gonna roll with the KFC Chiefs here. I'm rolling with the Kansas City Chiefs. Main reason is they're home. I wouldn't be shocked if the Patriots won this game because listen, the Chiefs are known to choke in the playoffs or do something stupid in the playoffs. But I think this year's different. I think that the Chiefs are going to continue their majestical run and get to their first Super Bowl since Super Bowl IV. I think that they're right where they want them. I think that the Chiefs wanted a rematch, and they're going to get one in their home. And I think that they are really mad that they didn't beat them the first time. And I think that they win. I think they win 33-30 on the last second field goal. So
even with the weather, Ricky, you think it's going to be that high scoring of a game?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Oh wow, you're bold. You are bold.
Anyway, that pretty much wraps it up for today's show. Yeah, another good show in the bag, guys. All of our teams had good seasons. Well, we didn't get where we wanted to go, but we had a good season nonetheless.
We can't all get where we want to go.
Exactly.
Super Bowl or bust.
Wouldn't it be hilarious? Wouldn't it be hilarious if the Eagles played the Cowboys in the NFC Championship game and the Ravens played the Browns in the AFC Championship game?
I would have
Next
a heart
year.
attack.
I think our heads would all explode.
Next year, let's make it happen.
Oh yeah,
Make it happen.
Do all your weird football rituals in the off season. Whatever superstition you have, make it happen. Because I need to see an Eagles Cowboys NFC, and then a Browns Ravens AFC, and then the Super Bowl of whoever wins those two. I'd honestly love if that just happened in general. Hank and I have always wanted the Dirty Bird Bowl.
Well, that'd be cool. That'd be cool.
What was it? Chris Berman has always been like picking the Eagles and Ravens to be in the Super Bowl like every year.
Well, that's
It
why
never happened.
Bring him back.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, guys. So that wraps it up for today's show. We will see you guys next week to see who is playing in the Super Bowl, and hopefully it's our picks because God forbid, we got to deal with, which we probably will deal with the Patriots. If the Patriots make it, I want them to face either this. Well, I want them to face the Saints because I want Drew Brees to beat them. I would love it to see a Rams and Patriots one.
Actually, I will say this.
Yeah.
I will say this. Right, the way things go, right, and I think we'll wrap it up here. Right, when it comes to Super Bowl rematches, okay, if you have a Super Bowl rematch in the same decade, the team that wins the first game wins every time. However, if it's in another decade, the team that lost the first Super Bowl ends up winning, a la the Cowboys-Steelers rivalry, a la the Redskins against the Dolphins, a la the Eagles and the Patriots, right? There you go.
Please, for the love of God.
On that, grab your tinfoil hats and enjoy your divisional round.
Real quick, guys, I did remember what I forgot. The reason why Kyler Murray will not do well in the NFL is because he got smoked by Alabama. Alabama has one of the most prolific, the most defensive players and offensive players taken in the draft. I think in the past, well, give or take a few here and there, but he didn't do very well against a somewhat NFL defense. He's going to get squashed, and that's why I think he's playing baseball. And then on that note,
yeah, so that's it, guys. We'll see you guys later. All right, have a good one.